On to round 4 then. If you're watching in order, you'll know the score I hit at Sands. At the point I recorded this, I actually did Rolling Hills before Sands, just the way I prefer to do it. So you'll see no record on Sands there at the moment. So it's my first go at Rolling Hills. I usually do okay here. It can be a real problem for some people, especially with lower stats. It's quite tricky to get a perfect round here, which would be 13 under for me from this tee. First hole is a fade. You can see the gap between the trees, a nice welcoming archway. With that wind, very, very tricky, and very, very difficult to hold the green here. It's probably going to bounce on the fairway and end up in that bunker on the right, but I can't go too far left because I'm going to hit the tree, the kind of archway I was talking about there. So I'm kind of pushing it as much as I can to the left. You'll see when I hit it, it's going to get quite close to that tree on the left. So I hit it a bit hard on the mark, as you can see there, very close to that tree, so couldn't have adjusted any more, but even with that, it's going in the sand. So not the best start. There's a chance of an eagle from the bunker shot here. A lot of it's trusting to the gods. He put it pretty close for it to actually be going in from here. You know, the science is getting it pretty close, and then that way you're going to get a lot of them in. For me, there's no way I can accurately say this is going to go in. If it's not, I'm going to aim it towards the hole, take everything into account, and as you can see, got it pretty close. With a bit of luck, it could have gone in, but you know, that's what it is, luck. Definitely, for me anyway. You give me that shot 10 times, I put one of them in. The key at Rolling Hills is the first 2 par 4s. Well, every hole's a key, obviously, but holes where a lot of people drop shots, if you can be eagling them and they're birdieing or parring, then you're getting somewhere. So this one is a draw. The danger is leaving it too short, not just hitting the sand. You'll see all the bunkers at Rolling Hills are surrounded by some sort of concrete substance. It can't possibly be wood. If you've ever hit one, you'll know what I mean, because the ball will cannon off it and you can end up almost back on the tee sometimes. Not quite, but it goes flying. So I'm bearing that in mind, but I'm wanting to hit the grass in the front, which I've managed to do, as you can see. So that's a pretty good result, actually. This putt shouldn't be too difficult. The pin's fairly kind, so you can see there's not. You can have some nasty pins at Rolling Hills, as we might see later on. This isn't too bad. I've got my lineup a bit off, but not too difficult to adjust, and you don't have to worry about it, a massive swing on the ball at the end or anything like that. It's going to come in comfortably at the end, so as long as I get my lineup right, get it roughly on the line, it's going to go in the hole. That's about bang on. So from the first 2 holes, 1 eagle out of the 2 is okay. Again, Master Pro A will probably find somebody goes 1 better. As it stood when I looked, there wasn't too much to compete against, but there will be later on in the week. The big guns will start rolling the big scores out. So we'll see at the end what score I get. We'll see if it holds up. So this one is a high shot. It's a bit far away for a backspin, which I'd probably prefer. Again, the consideration here is too short. You do want to try and clip the fairway at the front, but literally clip. If you're back a yard or 2 from the front of the green, it can easily just sit up and then stop. Equally, pitch it a yard or 2 onto the green, it can go off the back because it does slope away right at the end. So not much margin for error here, and the headwind helps a bit. If you imagine if you're hitting into a headwind, what would happen in real life, the ball would kind of slow up and drop kind of more vertical than it would do if you had a tailwind. Tailwinds are a bit of a killer on this sort of hole. If it was a tailwind, I would have definitely had to hit the fairway at the front for it to stop, but as it stood, I landed it on the green. It rolled a bit past, but it's not too bad. I'm fairly happy with that. So birdie, eagle, birdie. So 1 shot shy of where I could be, and 4 under. You'll notice the scores it gives you to compete against. I'm not sure if they're real or not. It's I think it just randomly picks people out, and people who've maybe not even played around yet. I don't know how that works, but anyway. This one is a fade from some tees, but from the 5th and 6th tee, you'll notice I'm going to hit it right into some branches. Touch wood, I've never actually made contact with any of these branches with this shot. I'm not sure how far I can push it, because you're always thinking, well, at some point I'm going to hit this tree. But I think just with the nature of this shot, the elevation of it, it tends to go between two of the branches in most instances. I would imagine it's one of these shots where if I suddenly played a forward, it would probably hit one or two of those branches. But you'll see it went right through a gap. It's, you know, you can go over the back there. If I hit it too hard, it could easily just roll a little bit too far into the rough, which would be bang goes the chance of an eagle. Struggling to get a par. Certainly a birdie is a good result if you do that. So this is a standard high shot. The key at Rolling Hills and some of the other courses that have really fast greens is bearing in mind that where the ball might kick over to the left a bit, somewhere like Kyoto or Sawgrass, it's Rolling Hills, the hills are steeper, the greens are faster, and the ball's going to kick over more than it would do. It's going to roll on a downslope more than it would do. It's going to stop more suddenly on an uphill slope. So that one, I aimed right down the middle. It's kind of there's a gradient on each corner of the green. There's like a hill on each corner. So somewhere in the middle, if the pin's on one of those corners, you're always going to leave an uphill putt, which is what I wanted. Again, you'll notice I hit that. You would have seen this on other videos. I kind of manufactured that to make sure I was hitting it a full short putter. That's giving me one extra point. Who knows, that might be key at the end of the week. You might win this round by 1 point, and it might be doing something like that gains you the point. If you've got the option, I would always try and play a full shot with whatever club, as long as it's not a detriment to where the ball's going to end up. This one is fairly straightforward with my distance. It can be a real killer, I would imagine, if you've got kind of 500 less stats than I have. Well, I can remember it, so I know it can be. You can eagle this quite comfortably, although it's a bit harder now. They've grown a few trees in front of the green. Again, these fast-growing trees that seem to come up overnight. But with the pin where it is, this is actually a good chance to attack the hole. Getting the odd chip in, again, can be the difference between winning and losing a round, and thus the whole thing. As it stands, I'm one shot off perfect, so if I could manage to put this in, then it would get me back on track to putting a perfect round in. So I had a couple of last minute adjustments, and I know it's going to come down a little bit on the hill from the right. Didn't get a particularly good view. You can see I kind of predicted that. I knew what was going to happen because I did it a couple of days ago. So that's a big boost. Having dropped a shot on the first, I've picked it back up unexpectedly on the 5th. So I'm on for a perfect round. If I can essentially we've got a birdie here, an eagle on the 7th, a birdie on the 8th, although I'm getting close to being able to eagle that one, and a birdie on the last would put me 13 under, which would be unlikely to be beat. Anything less, like I say, you'll always see in most rounds a perfect round. So if you're going to be winning it, you need to be putting in a few perfect rounds, which up to now, there is the one I've put in at Sands if you've watched that video, but at this point I was playing this, I hadn't actually put that in yet. Flirted a bit with the rough on the right there. The fairway tends to move the ball over the left. I gambled on it. Well, I assumed it was going to move more left than it did. I wouldn't ordinarily try and flirt with that rough on the right, because it could make this a lot more tricky. It's not too bad from that distance anyway, but as it stands, I couldn't have flopped out of the rough. But now I can play a flop shot, which is much more likely to go where I want it to. Not that far away from kicking into the hole. I've put that in before. You've got to adjust for the fact that there is a big hill that's going to kick the ball off to the left there. It's easy to adjust too little. I always tend to err on the side of adjusting it a bit too little, so I have this uphill putt. So there's the birdie on this hole. The next par 5, hole number 7. This is, again, if you've got the stats, fairly regulation. All the holes at Rolling Hills, all the tricky courses, in fact all courses, more stats you've got, usually the better, unless you're playing one of the Sequoia courses from the first tee or something, in which case it can be much harder with high stats. But certainly from the higher tees, holes which were an absolute nightmare can all of a sudden become fairly regulation. This is one of them. Really, it's just a case of drive to within distance of the flop. One thing I didn't mention, I'm actually using the 10-yard balls and the 15-yard tees, so I've got 10 yards more distance, not just on drives, but you'll notice my flop here, normally it would max out at 93 yards, and I think you should hopefully see, yeah, so I can go up to 94 and above, so I could go up to, I think, 98 yards with a flop. Doesn't sound a lot, but it can be the difference. If I had a big, 4-yard headwind in the World Championship, I could potentially still flop that, whereas others might struggle, and it's an absolute nightmare if you can't play a flop there, trying to get the elevation to get on the green. As it stands, I went after that one. I was hoping it'd roll back, drop in, you never know, but that's what I might do here. I'm not sure if I do it or not. Again, is go for I've gone for a full shot again, so that's 1 extra point if that goes in. It's on the touch of being maybe a bit of a risk, but I knew it would be hard enough to go up a 7 or 0.7 foot slope, again from experience. So there's a couple of occasions this round I've picked up a couple of extra points. I got a few extra points for chipping in, and also some extra points on the first hole because I didn't put it in. I had another perfect shot out of the bunker, so from a points point of view, this is a fairly good round. This one here, as you can see, a couple of yards, literally more distance, or even a more friendly wind, and I could potentially make the green here. As it stands, I'm going to be a little bit short. There may be guys around with a few more stats than me. I think I've got about 3,300. I've not checked for a little while, but there's probably guys who can just about eagle this one, which puts the score I'm going to get, a perfect round for me may not be a perfect round for them. They might be able to go one better. What you've got to be careful of here, there's a big slope. Now, a flop shot from this sort of distance isn't going to go particularly high, so it is going to pitch quite a way back from the hole. So it's going to pitch on that down slope. So there's a really big risk if you get it wrong of it rolling past the pin and landing in that bunker. It's quite a holeable bunker shot actually from a couple of yards, but obviously it puts at risk what should be a birdie. So you'll see I pitched on the hill. It's going to roll down and just hold the green. I wasn't, I could have played it a bit shorter and left the ball quite a lot shorter, and it would have been an easier or a better chance of a birdie, less risk of it going in the bunker, I guess. But there's always a chance it'll go in if you attack the hole, so if that had gone in, that would have put me 13 under, and again, you'd be looking at a pretty unassailable round. As it stands, I can tell you again, if you've watched my other video, you'll know the score here anyway. This is a really tricky, you've got to fade it round the tree, I think. I'm playing a high fade. When I say I think, I've not really played this hole a lot from the 6th tee. I've only ever played it in tour, and I put a bit of practice in it, but very little to actually gauge where I should be hitting this. Now, as such, I have played it once or twice and gone short and ended in the bunker, so I've probably overcompensated a bit here, and you'll see I end up. Let's see where it pitches. So the ball pitches, it's only a yard or two in the front of the green, so I could have dropped that off to like a low 99% and possibly left myself a chance of birdieing this, but as you can see, I didn't. I left it way past with, you've heard me talking about difficult putts, this is one of them. When you've got a big slope like this, it could have been harder if that elevation had been below me. It would have been absolutely impossible. As it stood, there's a chance that if I'd lined it up right the first time, I could have holed this, but whereas normally you can just have a look at the difference and adjust accordingly, when you've got holes with a big elevation like this or a big gradient, the more you go into the gradient, the more the gradient's going to have an effect. So you've got to guess, you've got to say, okay, it would be this much and a bit more, but that bit, whether there's some mathematical calculation that can calculate that, I don't know. So basically best guess and hit it, which is what I did and failed. So on for a perfect round, didn't quite make it. However, I have actually got 4 more tries at that. There's a chance I could improve my round. At the minute, it wouldn't really make a difference because I'm top anyway, so there's not a great deal of me going for a 13 under, or better if I would get a chip in when I'm first anyway. It wouldn't gain me any more points in the round. So I'll keep an eye on it, and if somebody goes ahead of me, yeah, I'll have another go at it. But as it stands, that's going to be my attempt at Rolling Hills for this week. What I'm going to do is tag onto the end of this video the positioning as it stands. So this is Saturday afternoon when I'm recording this in the UK. A couple of days left to go, so things will change, but we'll get a good idea as to where I am and what's going to happen. Thanks for watching.